Welcome to the Memorial Day presentation by the Education Committee of USS Indianapolis CA-35 Legacy Organization. In the United States, Memorial Day is a federal holiday for mourning the military personnel who have died while serving in the United States Armed Forces. Memorial Day is observed on the last Monday in May. Today, we mourn 888 lives lost in 1945 while serving in the U.S. Navy aboard USS Indianapolis CA-35 during World War II. I'm Marilyn Henry, Chairman of the Education Committee. I'm married to Earl Henry Jr., son of the dental officer of the Indianapolis, Lieutenant Commander Earl Henry. His son, my husband, was 6 weeks old when his dad died in the tragic sinking of USS Indianapolis. Of the 888 lives lost on Indianapolis in 1945, 9 crew members died as a result of the Kamikaze attack, March 31st, 1945. Just 4 months later, July 30th, 879 men died as a result of torpedoes fired by a Japanese submarine, which sank the Indianapolis in only 12 minutes. So these 888 men are being honored on this Memorial Day presentation. Jim Belcher Jr., will you describe your relationship to Indianapolis CA-35 and the mission of this storied ship?
Thank you, Marilyn. My name is James Robert Belcher Jr., and I'm the son of USS Indianapolis survivor James Belcher of Abbeville, Alabama. He was a radioman aboard the ship. And I'm also the son of a World War II survivor, Toyoko Inoue Belcher of Sasebo, Japan. I'm an Air Force veteran and an honorary USS Indianapolis survivor. Thank you for joining us for our Memorial Day program. It is certainly an honor to pay respects not only to our 879 young USS Indianapolis crewmen lost at sea on that final cruise in July 1945, and the 9 crew lost on 31 March 1945 at Okinawa, but also to all servicemen and women who made the ultimate sacrifice in that war and all wars before and after. To all the sailors, soldiers, Marines, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, Merchant Marine who have died in the line of duty, may they all rest in peace, knowing they are never forgotten. We pay our respects today and every day. There's a wall at the U.S. Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio that states, "We are the keepers of their stories." It is with this in mind, we today take a moment and share some stories of our lost sailors and Marines who gave their lives to help end that war in 1945 and give us so many of the freedoms that we enjoy today. The USS Indianapolis had a very storied history. Commissioned in 1932, she served in the Atlantic and Pacific before World War II. She was often called upon to transport President Franklin Roosevelt overseas. On that tragic day, December 7th, 1945, the Indy was assigned to Pearl Harbor, but was in operations far to the west. The Indianapolis was the flagship of the Fifth Fleet with Admiral Raymond Spruance aboard. She valiantly fought in 10 major battles during the war. Those battles were Bougainville, the Aleutians Attu operations, Gilbert Islands, the Marshall Islands that included Kwajalein, Majuro Atolls, and Eniwetok, the Asiatic Pacific raids, Palau, Yap, and Ulithi, and then the Marianas operations, Saipan, Guam, and the Battle of the Philippine Sea. She also participated in the capture of Tinian Island, the Western Caroline Islands occupation, Iwo Jima operations, and Okinawa operations. Little known during the last 2 operations, the USS Indianapolis took part in task force direct attacks on the Japanese mainland. And of course, their final encounter with the enemy was on 31 July 1945, just after midnight, when they crossed paths with the Imperial Japanese submarine I-58 between Guam and Leyte in the Philippines. During all these battles, the USS Indianapolis suffered a horrific attack by Japanese kamikazes when one Imperial Japanese Army Ki-43 Type 3 Oscar surprised the crew in the early morning light of 31 March 1945 off the coast of Okinawa. This was on the eve of the Okinawa invasion. In this account, described by author Edwin Hoyt in his book, The Kamikazes, he wrote, and I quote, "That morning, 5 planes took off from the 8th Air Division's home field in Kyushu. One plane was shot down by American fighters about halfway to the target. A second was lost due to bad weather and finally made its way back to base. But the other 3 pilots took advantage of the bad weather to sneak through. The pilots were Captain Suto Sasakawa, Lieutenant Shinfuto Takahashi, and Corporal Chuchi Yurita. At Okinawa, they found the water teeming with American warships and attacked. The group chosen were the USS New Mexico and the USS Indianapolis. 2 of the planes were shot down by anti-aircraft fire as they came zooming down, but the third smashed into USS Indianapolis. This attack killed 9, wounded 20 more, and came close to sinking the heavy cruiser. Admiral Spruance transferred his flag to the USS New Mexico in the following days, as Indy then limped back to Mare Island, California for her repairs. 1/3 crew turnover, secret cargo mission, and final voyage followed. On the night of 30 July, just after midnight, and just 4 days after delivery of that secret cargo, the Little Boy atomic bomb, the IJN submarine I-58, commanded by Captain Mochitsura Hashimoto, spotted the Indy and with 2 of 6 torpedoes launched, struck and sank this 610-foot-long cruiser with 1,195 men aboard, gone in just 12 minutes beneath the sea. It's estimated 300 went down with the ship, putting about 900 in the water. By a series of errors, they were not missed, and sailors and Marines struggled for survival, most in Kapok life jackets only. No food or water, covered in caustic bunker oil, and many wounded from fires, explosions, and injuries before leaving the ship. Experiencing trauma, hunger and thirst, dehydration, exposure, and hypothermia, saltwater ingestion, delusions, and shark attacks. 3 of 4 of these brave men succumbed to this horrible situation that had been thrust upon them over the next 4.5 days. Spotted by accident on the 4th day by an aircraft flying above, the rescue effort involved Navy and Army aircraft and Navy ships rushing to their aid. Aboard the USS Bassett, rescue LCVP, then Ensign Peter Wren described the scene he came upon. He called them objects in the water. He said that he described to me that pulling the first survivors aboard by the arm resulted in the skin coming directly off the arms of some of these rescued men. And the screams and the cries from these men, he said, Peter told me he would never, ever, ever forget that sound. It haunted him. One of the rescue men with Peter was Bill Van Wilt, who, against orders, jumped into the Pacific with the sharks to accompany the men in the water because, as he described it, when the LCVP was going to leave, they would give up hope. And he knew that if he stayed with them, that they would know that Peter and his LCVP would come back. Bill, in one instance, rescued 3 men at one time, grabbing one under each arm and one between his legs to hold them above water as their life jackets sank, well, waterlogged by the time in the water. Bill told me that the hardest thing in the world for him was trying to determine who was alive and who was dead. He was 19 years old and was not trained in any medical way, but he was told only bring the living aboard. So he swam from man to man, body to body in the water, and he would try to determine who was alive and who was dead. It troubled him for the rest of his life. And the words that he said to me haunt me to this day. He said, "Who am I to play God?" If I can't imagine what those men went through. And for this reason, we must never forget. The sacrifices of these men must never be forgotten. Today, we honor their heroism, their sacrifice, and their memories. Robert, please tell us about the Gold Star and Blue Star families.
Thanks, Jim. I'm Robert Cantrell, a friend of survivors. And since World War I, military families often display service flags featuring a blue star for every service member serving in the armed forces. If a family member was lost in the war, the star's color changed to gold. The USS Indianapolis, 879 stars of the blue stars in total changed to gold, along with the 9 from the Kamikaze victims. From the crew of 1,195 aboard USS Indianapolis on July 30th, 1945, 879 blue stars changed to gold, and many of the USS Indianapolis families received their notifications. At the same time, their neighbors were celebrating the end of the war. Now, years later, 1995, to honor their lost buddies, the Indianapolis survivors lobbied the city of Indianapolis to commission a memorial of their ship. And this memorial was unveiled in 1995. The names of the entire crew are etched to the memorial in alphabetical order. An engraved star appears alongside the name of each survivor. The survivors, if they wished, had a chance to tell their stories. For those lost at sea, we look to others to tell us their stories. With that, I'll introduce you to Michael.
Thank you, Robert. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael William Emery. I'm the nephew and namesake of William Friend Emery, Seaman First Class, Quartermaster, and lost at sea. On March 31st, 1945, the USS Indianapolis CA-35 was hit by a kamikaze just prior to the Okinawa Gunto campaign. 9 men died, including Earl, bugler second class. In this slide, upper left, is a photo of Thomas McNabb, Jr., fireman second class from Bad Axe, Michigan, who went aboard the Indy on May 12, 1945. Tommy was 18 years old. Top right is Billy G. Cantrell, fireman second class from Dallas, Texas. Billy came aboard the Indy on December 1st, 1944. Billy was 18 years old. Bottom left is Garland Rich from Coleman, Texas. Garland went aboard the Indy on December 21st, 1943. Garland was 20 years old. Bottom right is a photo of my uncle and namesake, William Friend Emery, from New Canaan, Connecticut. My grandfather, Lieutenant Commander John Colvin Emery, under the direct orders from his superior, his wife, and my grandmother, Janet Miller Emery, told her husband to not put her beloved son in harm's way. 5 years earlier, in 1940, my uncle Stephen Gray Emery contracted spinal meningitis and passed away. Uncle Stephen was 4 years old. During the war, my grandfather served in the Navy and was based in San Francisco. My grandfather pulled his Navy strings and got his prodigal son transferred from the East Coast to the West Coast and assigned to the Indy. Uncle Bill's ship was in dry dock at Mare Island in Vallejo, California, which is only 30 minutes away from my grandparents' home in Mill Valley. Uncle Bill could come home and visit his parents on liberties. Bill Emery went aboard the Indianapolis on May 8th, 1945. Bill Emery was 19 years old. Ironically, and perhaps a foreshadowing of his own fate, Uncle Bill replaced a man in the navigation division who was killed in the kamikaze attack. His name was Calvin Ball Emery. Jeff, why don't you speak about the lost buddies on the Indy?
Thank you, Michael. Hi, my name is Jeff Sweeney. My great uncle, Wallace Mainfield Jeffels, coxswain, lost at sea, went aboard the USS Indianapolis July 22nd, 1943. The 4 pictures that everyone sees is a physical bond between Sale and friends that was made in their hometown before going off to boot camp and stationed across the country. This bond would last a lifetime with memories in unexpected and unforeseen situations. All of these men lived in the moment. The pictures that we have are the stories that can be told from the snap of a camera to reveal the moment the picture was taken. This Memorial Day, we continue to bow our heads to the ones that gave the ultimate sacrifice for this beautiful country. For the photos that we hold near and dear to our hearts is just a glimpse of what we have as family and friends of the USS Indianapolis to pay honor to our loved ones. While some men came home to reunite with family and loved ones, most did not. To the 879 men that went down with the ship and the 9 victims of the Kamikaze attack, we continue to share photos and stories of our loved ones. The search also continues for the sailors with missing photos, so that each sailor can have a photo with their name to be remembered and to be recognized with a photo. My great uncle Wallace, pictured in the top left picture on the right-hand side with 2 of his lost buddies that had never been identified with him, knowing those 2 men might not have ever made it home to their families as well after the war. All 3 of these men are forever in our hearts of the USS Indianapolis story, just like all the other photos and so many family members have. This Memorial Day, we salute all of the fallen heroes, but especially all of the lost at sea families and Gold Star families. I would now like to turn the next slide over to Dawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. My name is Dawn Ott Bollhoefer, and I'm the granddaughter of Theodore G. Ott, Yeoman First Class, lost at sea. My Aunt Pat, Grandpa's younger sister, told me that her brother had 3 dreams. Number 1 was to marry Peggy, number 2 was to be a sailor, and number 3 was to be a father. As a young boy in Eddyville, Iowa, my grandfather fell in love with Peggy, although she had no idea. He would watch her walk home from school and dream that someday he would make her his wife. That dream seemed shattered later as Deanie, as he was lovingly called, and his family moved to California looking for job opportunities. He completed high school in California and then joined the Navy in 1941. At least one of his dreams had come true. While stationed in Hawaii, he met up with an old friend from his Iowa hometown, and he asked about Peggy, and wouldn't you know it, the old friend had her contact information. Grandpa wrote to Peggy, and their romance began. She came to visit him and stayed in California. In September of 1943, he went aboard USS Indianapolis, where he served until the tragic sinking. In November of 1944, my grandfather and grandmother were married in a small ceremony. His second dream had finally come true. After a short honeymoon, he returned to duty. On March 19, 1945, Grandpa celebrated his 22nd birthday, the event you see in this picture. My grandpa is the one on the right with all of those letters. As part of the fun, they showed off those letters and had a little competition about who had the most. Those letters helped keep their home close to their hearts, and that competition was a lot of fun. In just a few short days, Indianapolis would be hit by the Kamikaze, killing 9 of her sailors and wounding her deeply. She and her sailors limped back to Mare Island for repairs. Grandma and Grandpa were able to spend some much-needed and joyful time together as the ship was repaired. They lived in a little hut in the Navy Yard at Mare Island, sharing their tiny house with Robert Eugene Kilman and his wife, Ginny. Gene, as they called him, is also in this birthday photo. He's the one on the far left. They spent many idyllic days, Grandma setting up their little home, enjoying taking care of her new husband, walking to the ship to meet him when his day was over, and then seeing a movie at the theater in the evening. They dreaded the day that Grandpa might leave again. In July, the news came. He was going back. My grandpa expressed reservations about their new assignment. It was all very secret, but he knew that something was different with this mission. Grandma encouraged him that all would be well, and he shipped out on July 16th. My grandma carried guilt for the rest of her life, wishing that she hadn't encouraged his return, but knowing that he had to do it. Unbeknownst to Grandpa, a letter was soon to be sent, hoping to meet up with him when this secret mission was complete. A letter that would be returned to my grandma unopened. She was pregnant. His third dream was fulfilled, although he would never know it. In February of 1946, my grandmother gave birth to my father, Theodore, and his twin sister, Peggy. Their legacy of love would continue. Earl Henry, your mother and father's love story was also sadly cut short, which I know affected your mother for the rest of her life. But also, we know that your father was a very talented man. Can you please share with us about the lost talents that went down with the ship?
Thank you, Don. My father was Lieutenant Commander Earl Henry. He was the dentist aboard Indianapolis. He did not survive the July 30th sinking. My father had served in the Naval Reserves and volunteered for sea duty. He brought with him prior talents. While on board, he entertained the crew with bird calls during talent night. Yes, he could imitate the call of approximately 60 birds. The other officers thought my father would embarrass the officer corps, but the young crew loved listening to the calls of familiar birds. These calls reminded them of home. Known as the painter of birds, my father produced 2 bird paintings aboard Indianapolis. The first was of the American bald eagle, spreading its wings to protect a 48-star American flag. The eagle is shown ripping apart the Japanese war flag. His second and last painting, which was a birthday present to my mother, was a pair of cardinals on a window ledge. These paintings can be viewed at earlhenrybirdprints.com. Serving alongside my father were many other talented men lost in the sinking of Indianapolis. Among them was Lieutenant Junior Grade David Lowell Driscoll, who came aboard in 1945 as a communications officer. He had attended Harvard and UCLA. He was a concert pianist. He was offered $300 a week to play background music for silent movies, but instead Driscoll joined the Navy and he lost his life in the sinking on July 30th, 1945. Robert Swanson took a creative path in his career with both the Mobiola Film Editing Company and Walt Disney Studios. These were both located in his hometown of North Hollywood, California. We understand that with Disney, credits include work on some of the original animation pieces for classics such as Pinocchio and Dumbo, released in the 1940s. Robert boarded the Indianapolis May 5th, 1943, losing his life on July 30th, 1945. Alfred Sedivi served aboard the Indianapolis as a gifted photographer. He joined the crew in the early days of 1942, shortly after Pearl Harbor. He used his talents to capture all 10 of Indy's successful campaigns, where the ship and her crew earned 10 battle stars. He also gave us a rare look into the more personal and lighthearted aspects of life aboard the ship by capturing the daily life of the crew. 1,150 of Sedivi's photos can be viewed in the Sedivi collection at usnavalinstitute.org. We'll hope you'll take the time to view this incredible collection. Historian Dr. Richard Hulver reveals in his book, which is titled A Grave Misfortune, that the average age of the final sailing crew was only 19. If these 879 young men had lived, only God knows what incredible things they might have accomplished. They may have been talented athletes, chemists, professors, ministers, farmers, salesmen, executives, and of course, fathers. On this Memorial Day, we recognize talents lost in the sinking of USS Indianapolis, and we hope the sacrifice of these brave young men continues to inspire future generations to live up to their full potential. Robert, please tell us about other ships that were lost at sea, like Indianapolis.
USS Indianapolis was one of many ships from many countries lost during World War II. Ships such as the HMS Dunedin, the USS Juno, the SS Cape San Juan, and the RMS Laconia had crewmen and passengers who survived for days adrift at sea. Most of these stories have been largely forgotten outside of the families of those aboard. The Indianapolis, through her appearance in many books and in the popular culture, is comparatively better known, and her servicemen can, at least partly, speak for the others. Three out of the four crew members aboard the USS Indianapolis on July 30th, 1945, remain at sea. An unestimated 1 in 4 went down with the ship. The rest drifted with their buddies for the time they remained alive. Afterward, after the rescue and a clearing of the sea by the crews of the recovery ships, and for more than 7 decades following the sinking, the ship's resting place on the seafloor remained unknown. For many survivors and their families, and for the longer list of families of crewmen lost at sea, her unbroken peace in the ocean deep was as it should be. On August 19th, 2017, however, the sunken Indianapolis was found. The greater part of the ship resting upright in the Marianas Basin of the Philippine Sea, 3 miles deep on an abyssal plain of settled clay and silica, under the crushing water pressure of 8 tons per square inch. She was discovered by an oceanic team aboard the RV Petrel, a 250-foot research vessel owned by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. The bow of the Indianapolis emerged first, displayed on a video screen, viewed by operators controlling a robotic undersea rover above or aboard the Petrel. The bow was lying sideways, positively identified by the numeral 35 painted on the exposed starboard side. The rest of the ship was found standing tall and nearly intact a mile away. Several expeditions to find the Indianapolis had been launched before. All had failed to find any trace of the ship. There was a reason, therefore, to celebrate among Paul Allen's team, but also a responsibility. The team had found, as one survivor would say, a tombstone for 300 to 400 men. So, before releasing a statement to the press, the Petrel team began a series of calls to selected members of the Indianapolis Legacy Organization. These members, in turn, called family members associated with the ship. Michael Emery remembers receiving his call.
Thank you, Robert. I will never, ever forget August 19th, 2017. Through the years, I've had many discussions and debates on whether the Indy should be found or just let her rest where she sank. It's a sacred graveyard, and I did not want to see it disturbed. One morning, I woke up with 2 voicemails on my cell phone. The first voicemail was from Jim Belcher in Virginia. Jim was very emotional talking about Indy's lost at sea families. The second voicemail was from Sarah Vladeck in California. Sarah told me to don't turn on the TV, don't turn on the radio, don't go on social media, but told me to call her immediately. I returned Sarah's phone call, and Sarah told me that in 30 minutes, the United States Navy were going to release news to the public that the USS Indianapolis CA-35 had finally been found 73 years after she was torpedoed and sunk. I was in total shock. I didn't even know anyone was looking for Uncle Bill's ship. I was not prepared emotionally for the shocking news. I walked around in a daze all day. I finally called my mother in the afternoon in New Canaan, Connecticut, and told her the news. I broke down crying, and I don't like crying in front of my mom. The next day, I packed my bags and ran away to Southport Island in the Boothbay Harbor region of Maine to process my feelings and emotions, which is where I am today. I've heard several survivors say that the discovery of their ship was closure for them. I thought the exact opposite. I had so many emotions and questions why William Friend Emery did not get off his doomed sinking ship. After the Indy was sunk, my family did not accept the news of Bill Emery being killed in action. It's overwhelming for a mother and father to lose one child, let alone 2 children within 5 years. My grandfather sent several of his naval colleagues to survivors' hospitals in Leyte and Guam, trying to find any information on what happened to their beloved missing in action son. They found Indy survivor Vincent Allard, who served in the same navigation division as Uncle Bill. Vincent reported that he last saw Bill Emery wearing a Kapok life jacket at his battle station with several other men from the quartermaster division. Vincent and one of his shipmates tried to go back down below deck to prepare to go overboard, but were blocked by gear. When they returned to the navigation deck, Bill Emery and his shipmates at his battle station were gone. No one saw Uncle Bill or his group in the water and could only surmise they went down with their ship. Dawn, why don't you talk about Gold Star families?
Thank you, Michael. As Robert said earlier, during World War I, families with members serving in the military would put up blue stars with flags with the number of stars corresponding to the number of family members serving. If one military member was lost during their service, the color of the star was changed to gold for that family member. Hence, Gold Star Family was created, a designation that reflects the sacrifice families make in losing a loved one in service to their country. As family members of USS Indianapolis lost at sea sailors, you are a Gold Star family. Being a Gold Star family is not something that anyone wants to achieve. Despite the obvious grief of losing a loved one, it often carries a lasting impact on the family. Feelings of pride for the service your loved one gave to our country often runs parallel with the grief of losing a spouse, a child, a sibling, or a parent. My Aunt Pat adored her her older brother Deanie. For many years, she carried the pain of losing her brother when USS Indianapolis was sunk. In 2018, she attended her first USS Indianapolis reunion, finding camaraderie and fellowship. Being acknowledged as a Gold Star family helped to begin a long-awaited healing process. She's pictured here with her daughter Jan in the top middle picture and with her son Jeff in the bottom right-hand corner. On this Memorial Day, may we all remember the great sacrifice all of the Gold Star families across the U.S. have made. Marilyn, if you could tell us about the beautiful memorial we see in that picture.
This is the USS Indianapolis National Memorial located in Indianapolis, Indiana. The monument is the result of a 50-year dream by the survivors of the sinking of USS Indianapolis. The survivors worked tirelessly to erect a fitting memorial to their missing shipmates until it was formally dedicated in 1995. Funding was provided by donations, especially from the business community of Indianapolis. The memorial is located on the north end of Canal Walk near downtown Indianapolis. It is made from gray and black marble. The memorial is designed in the shape of the cruiser itself. The story of the sinking is etched on one side, as you can see in the top right-hand corner. And on the other side, there's a listing of names of the 1,195 crew and one passenger who made up the final sailing crew. A star placed by certain names indicates the crew member as a survivor of the tragic sinking. In the upper left-hand slide, you see my husband, Earl Henry, pointing to the top where his dad's name is etched. And down on the right-hand slide is Jim Belcher, probably touching someone else that he knows who was also a survivor, as was his dad. The legacy families gather around this memorial for special events. Michael Emery, tell everyone about the Legacy Flag Program and then the Honor Watch gathering.
Thank you, Marilyn. In the large photo, you'll see honorary survivor Jason Woody with his grandfather, survivor Eugene Morgan, boatswain mate, second class, and honorary survivor Michael Hussey, folding an American flag after it was raised for Indy Lost at Sea family. In the upper right is a photo of Michael Hussey and myself saluting an American flag. The bottom photo is of Wallace Jeffers' family. Wallace was a coxswain on board the Indy. Wallace's great-nephew is Jeff Sweeney, who is a member of our Legacy Education team. The USS Indianapolis Legacy Flag Program was created in 2018 to honor the USS Indianapolis final sailing crew who did not return home to their family's loving embrace, under the guidance and cooperation with Brigadier General Stuart Goodwin, retired United States Air Force, and Executive Director of the Indiana War Memorial Commission. American flags are flown over our CA-35 memorial for each lost at sea family who requests one, including a certificate and an American flag sent to the LAS family as a symbol of the ultimate sacrifice and love for the precious freedoms that we all cherish today. You can find more information on our website, ussindianapolis.com. The next part I would like to talk about is our annual Honor Watch. In 2015, we had our Indy reunion in early July. When I arrived home in Concord, Mass., I saw on the calendar that July 30th was fast approaching. I wondered if there was going to be any acknowledgement on that day of Indy's tragic sinking. I could not just sit in my home and do nothing on a day that changed my family's life forever and 878 other Indy families as well. After a sleepless night, I emailed General Goodwin early one morning and asked if there was going to be any acknowledgement of Indy's sinking on July 30th. I wrote to General Goodwin that if there was nothing planned, I had some ideas on how to commemorate and honor that day. General Goodwin emailed me quickly back and said to call him. Well, when a brigadier general says to call him, I couldn't dial my phone fast enough. I shared with the general about coming down to Indianapolis, laying a beautiful wreath of remembrance, honoring Indy's 879 lost at sea crew, and stand watch all day and into the evening, sharing the Indy story and explaining who William Friend Emery was, letting people see his Purple Heart, his last letter to his grandparents in Madison, Wisconsin, Captain McVeigh's handwritten note to my grandfather, and Super 8 black and white and color videos from 1939 and 1945 of Uncle Bill and my family that were on my cell phone. General Goodwin said he would alert the media and send an email to the Indianapolis community about what we had planned. Honorary survivor Jim Belcher heard about our plans and was so inspired he drove 9 hours to stand watch on our very first inaugural Honor Watch. Honorary survivor Michael Hussey also joined us that year. Our annual Honor Watch gets bigger and better each year. I encourage anyone who is a lost at sea family, survivor family, rescue and recovery family, former crew family, honorary survivor, or a special friend to Indy story and legacy to come down and join us. It's an emotional day. And there's no place I'd rather spend the anniversary of Indy sinking than to be with my Indy family. We are all here to support one another, love one another, give lots of healing hugs. Carl, why don't you describe the archiving of Indy's lost at sea family members?
Thank you, Michael. My name is Carl Fahnestock. I am a United States Navy veteran. I am also a member of the USS Indianapolis CA-35 Legacy Organization's Education Committee and also our Project 888 team. Our team has been aggressively progressing the compilation and archival of stories about Indy's lost at sea crew members and their families. We are planning to publish this information on our USSIndianapolis.com website. We're very grateful that many LAS family members and friends have already shared information to our team, but we absolutely would welcome the receipt of more information. Our ideal goal is to include information about all 888 lost at sea crew members. The lost at sea stories need to be told and carried forward. Over the decades following the July 30th, 1945 sinking, the Indy survivors who had actually witnessed the sinking firsthand have shared their stories and knowledge about the tragedy and about the crew members who were lost at sea. We would like to include your personal family stories as well. Specifically, how did the tragic loss of your loved one impact your family, your grandparents, parents, siblings, children, etc.? Please prepare your family stories and send them in an email addressed to project888@ussindianapolis.org. Again, that address is project888@ussindianapolis.org. Our Project 888 team wants to carry the torch to honor your loved one. On behalf of your loved one, we thank you in advance for your participation. With that, I would like to now turn it over to Jim Belcher.
Thank you, Carl. Now, we, the families and friends of the fallen, it's our turn. We have the watch. I'd like to share this Navy poem. It kind of expresses how we feel. For 20 years, the sailor had stood the watch. While some of us were in our bunks at night, the sailor stood the watch. While some of us were in school learning our trade, this shipmate stood the watch. Yes, even before some of us were born into this world, this shipmate stood the watch. In those years when the storm clouds of war were seen brewing on the horizon of history, this shipmate stood the watch. Many times he would cast an eye ashore and see his family standing there, needing his guidance and help, needing that hand to hold during those hard times. But he stood the watch. He stood the watch for 20 years. He stood the watch so that we, our families, and our fellow countrymen could sleep soundly in safety each and every night, knowing that a sailor stood the watch. Today we are here to say, shipmate, the watch stands relieved by those you have trained, guided, and led. Shipmate, you stand relieved. We have the watch. Boatswain, stand by to pipe the side. Shipmates going ashore. Thank you. With that, I'd like to turn the program over to, I forget.
I'm right here, Jim.
Michael, I'm sorry. Michael, please.
As a Gold Star Lost at Sea family, the most emotional dates for me are July 30th and Memorial Day. I reach out to my fellow Lost at Sea families today with love and remind you that you are not alone. If you are having a difficult day today, please reach out to your family, your Indy family, or your friends. We care, and we're here to listen to you, to comfort you, and to keep you in our thoughts and prayers. When I'm feeling sad and emotional about the loss of my uncle and namesake, the greatest healing words anyone can ever ask me are, tell me about your Indy lost loved one. My sad frown gets turned upside down real quick. Do you know what my first thought is? I wonder how much time this person has for me to share about my personal hero, Bill Emery. Thank you for listening. I wish everyone much love and peace.